The china teacup shattered against the hardwood floor, sending Earl Grey splashing across my slippers and the Persian rug David had bought me for our 30th anniversary. Mama? Mama, are you there? Sarah's voice crackled through the phone I'd dropped when her words hit me like a physical blow. At 73, I'd survived my husband's death, raised 3 children mostly on my own after he passed, and weathered more storms than I cared to count. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for this moment. I fumbled for the receiver with trembling fingers. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, you tell me I heard you wrong. But even as I said it, I knew I hadn't. My daughter, my baby girl who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares and beg me to braid her hair before school, had just told me she'd sold my house. My car. Everything I had left in this world. Mama, please listen. How? The word came out as a whisper. How could you do this to me? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Through my living room window, I could see Mrs. Henderson's porch light flickering on and off the way it always did when the wiring acted up. Normal things. Ordinary Tuesday evening things. While my entire world crumbled around me. I had to, Sarah finally said, and I could hear tears in her voice now. Richard and we've been planning this wedding, and his family expects certain things. The country club reception, the flowers, the dress. Mama, it costs so much more than we thought. So you sold my home? I gripped the phone tighter, my arthritic knuckles white against the plastic. The house where you were born? Where your father died in our bedroom upstairs. I knew you'd understand. You always understand. And Richard found you a lovely place. It's a senior living community with activities and meal service. You'll make friends, Mama. You've been so lonely since Daddy passed. Lonely. As if loneliness justified theft. As if missing my husband of 48 years gave my daughter the right to strip away everything familiar, everything that held his memory. When? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded when everything inside me was screaming. When do I have to leave? Another pause. The new owners take possession Friday. I know it's short notice, but Richard's mother helped arrange the senior community. You can move in this weekend, right after the wedding. 3 days. She was giving me 3 days to pack up 50 years of memories and pretend to be happy about it. The power of attorney, I said slowly, pieces clicking together in my mind. The papers I signed after my stroke. You weren't thinking clearly then, Mama. The doctor said you might have some confusion for a while. I was just protecting you from having to make difficult decisions. Protecting me. The doctor had said I was fine, that the small stroke had caused no lasting damage. I'd been managing my affairs perfectly well, thank you very much. But Sarah had been so concerned, so insistent that I needed help with the paperwork. Insurance forms and medical bills could be overwhelming, she'd said. Let her handle the details while I focused on getting better. I'd trusted her completely. Sarah. I closed my eyes trying to find the words. Trying to understand how the little girl who used to pick me dandelions and call them sunshine flowers had grown into someone capable of this betrayal. This isn't protecting me. This is stealing from me. Don't be dramatic, Mama. You'll be happier at Sunset Manor. They have bingo on Thursdays and a beauty salon. You won't have to worry about maintaining that big old house anymore. Dramatic. 48 years of marriage, 25 years of raising children in these walls, 5 years of grieving my husband while surrounded by his presence. And she called my devastation dramatic. Where's the money? I asked. What did you do with the money from my house? The silence stretched so long I wondered if the line had gone dead. Then, barely audible. The wedding. And Richard's business has been struggling. We needed a fresh start, Mama. A real chance at happiness. My house. My car. My independence. All sacrificed for my daughter's fresh start. I thought about the power of attorney document I'd signed 6 months ago, how Sarah had assured me it was just temporary, just until I felt completely back to normal. How she'd kissed my forehead and called me her brave mama and promised she'd never do anything I wouldn't want her to do. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 10 o'clock. In 12 hours, Sarah would be Mrs. Richard Blackwell, starting her new life with the proceeds from the theft of mine. Mama, I know you're upset, but you'll see. This is for the best. You can't rattling around in that big house forever, and Sunset Manor has wonderful reviews. Mrs. Pemberton from church lives there now, remember? She loves it. Mrs. Pemberton, who had dementia and didn't remember her own name half the time. That was Sarah's idea of a testimonial. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting, and walked to the mantelpiece where David's photograph smiled at me from its silver frame. 48 years of marriage, and he'd never once betrayed my trust. Never once made a decision about our life without consulting me first. Sarah, I said quietly, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Of course, Mama. I'm listening. You are no longer welcome in my home. Whatever time I have left in this house, you will not darken my doorway. Mama, don't be. And your wedding tomorrow? I won't be there. The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me I'd hit my mark. Sarah had counted on my compliance, my understanding, my endless capacity to forgive her anything because she was my baby girl. But some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. You can't mean that, she whispered. Mama, I'm your daughter. I'm getting married tomorrow. You have to be there. I have to be nowhere, I said and hung up the phone. The silence that followed was deafening. No more of Sarah's breathless explanations, no more justifications for the unjustifiable. Just me, standing in my living room, soon to be someone else's living room, with David's photograph and the shattered remains of my evening tea. I looked around at the walls that had witnessed our children's first steps, their first words, their tears and laughter and teenage rebellion. The kitchen where I'd cooked Sunday dinners for 25 years, where David had surprised me with breakfast in bed every anniversary. The staircase where he'd carried me over the threshold as a young bride, where I'd helped him up those last difficult weeks before the cancer took him. 3 days to say goodbye to all of it. The phone rang again. I stared at it, knowing it would be Sarah, probably crying now, ready to explain why I was being unreasonable. Ready to make me understand that this was all somehow for my own good. I walked into the kitchen, stepping carefully around the broken china, and made myself another cup of tea. The phone kept ringing, echoing through the house like an accusation. I didn't answer it. Outside, Mrs. Henderson's porch light finally gave up its flickering and went out completely, leaving her front yard in darkness. Just like my future. But as I sat back down in David's old recliner, the one Sarah probably would have sold too if she'd thought of it, I realized something surprising. I wasn't broken. Betrayed, yes. Devastated, absolutely. But not broken. At 73, I'd been widowed, robbed by my own daughter, and left essentially homeless. And I was still breathing. The phone finally stopped ringing. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. The phone rang again at 6:23 a.m. I'd been awake for hours, sitting in the pre-dawn darkness with David's old flannel robe wrapped around me like armor, watching the sunrise paint the walls of my soon-to-be former home. The broken teacup still lay scattered across the floor where I'd left it the night before. A crystalline reminder that my world had shattered along with it. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it ring until Sarah gave up, the way I'd done with her 11 calls after I'd hung up on her. But something in the persistence of it, the desperate rhythm of ring after ring, made me reach for the receiver. Mama! Sarah's voice was hoarse, raw with tears. Please don't hang up. Please. I know you hate me, but I need to explain. Explain? I kept my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. Explain how you stole my house. My car? Everything your father and I worked for our entire lives. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The words tumbled out in a rush. Derek said it would be simple, that we'd take care of you, that you'd be happier. Derek. I should have known. The man I'd met exactly twice, both times when Sarah had brought him for Sunday dinner. Tall, handsome in that polished way that made me think of used car salesmen. All white teeth and firm handshakes and eyes that never quite met mine when he spoke. He's a good man, Mama. You just don't know him like I do. I know enough. I remembered how he'd walked through my house both times, those calculating eyes taking inventory. How he'd asked pointed questions about the property value, the neighborhood, whether I'd ever considered downsizing. How he'd made Sarah nervous, the way she'd jumped every time he spoke, the way she'd apologized for everything. The pot roast being too dry, the coffee being too strong, me asking too many questions about his work. Tell me about the money, Sarah. All of it. Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to confess to breaking mother's vase or tracking mud through the house. Derek's a real estate developer, she began slowly. He's brilliant, Mama. He sees opportunities where other people see problems. But his last project, there were complications. The investors pulled out at the last minute, and he lost everything. The bank was going to foreclose on his office building, and he would have lost his business. So he decided to steal mine instead. It's not stealing. The protest came out sharp, defensive. You signed the power of attorney. It's legal. And Derek found you that beautiful place at Sunset Manor. They have activities and... Stop. I closed my eyes, trying to control the rage building in my chest. Just stop. I don't want to hear about bingo nights and beauty salons. I want to hear the truth. How much debt is he in, Sarah? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, barely a whisper. $200,000. My house. My beautiful house with its 4 bedrooms and wraparound porch. The place where I'd hung Christmas stockings and hosted Easter dinners and said goodbye to my husband, was worth exactly $230,000 according to the recent appraisal. And the wedding? I asked, though I already knew the answer. $50,000. Derek said we needed to make a good impression on his investors, show them he was successful. The country club, the flowers, the band. Everything has to be perfect. Perfect. While I was supposed to pack up 50 years of memories in 3 days and pretend to be grateful for it. Sarah Elizabeth, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are going to call off this wedding, and you are going to find a way to get my house back. I can't. Her voice cracked. Mama, you don't understand. The papers are signed. The new owners take possession on Friday. The wedding is today. Everyone's coming. Derek's family, his business partners. I can't just cancel everything. You can and you will. No. The word came out sharp, and I heard something new in her voice. Fear. Real, deep-seated terror. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. When things don't go his way. My blood went cold. What do you mean by that? Another pause. Nothing. He's been under a lot of stress lately. The business problems, the wedding planning. He doesn't mean to lose his temper. Lose his temper. The careful way she said it, the defensive tone. I'd heard it before. From my friend Margaret when she'd made excuses for her first husband's moods. From my neighbor Janet when she'd explained away the bruises on her arms as accidents. Sarah, has he hurt you? No. No, it's nothing like that. Derek would never. He's just intense. Passionate about success. And when people disappoint him. What happens when people disappoint him? The question hung in the air like smoke. I could hear her breathing, could practically feel her internal struggle through the phone line. He threw a glass at the wall last week, she finally admitted. When I suggested maybe we should have a smaller wedding. It didn't hit me or anything, but the way he looked at me. Mama, I've never seen anyone that angry. My hands clenched around the phone. Sarah, you need to get away from this man. Right now. Today. Before you marry him. I can't. Everything's paid for. His family is flying in from California. The church is booked, the reception hall. And besides, it's too late. She stopped abruptly. You already what? Silence. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, you finish that sentence right now. I already sold your house, she whispered. And spent the money. I'd known that, of course, but hearing her say it again was like being punched in the stomach. On what? You said the wedding was $50,000. Where's the rest? Derek's debts were more than he told me at first. And then there were the lawyers for the business reorganization, and he needed new equipment for his office, and... How much more? All of it. The words came out so quietly I almost missed them. All of it, Mama. Every penny. Every penny. My entire life savings, David's life insurance policy, the equity we'd built over decades of mortgage payments, gone. Vanished into the pockets of a man who threw glasses when he was angry and made my daughter afraid to disappoint him. And you think this man loves you? He does. But there was no conviction in her voice. He's under pressure. Once his business turns around, once we're married and settled, everything will be different. Oh, sweetheart. My heart broke for her, for the scared little girl hiding behind the woman's voice. That's what they all say. That's what every woman tells herself when she's with a man like that. Derek isn't like that. He's not some abusive monster. He's just what? Just someone who convinced you to steal from your own mother? Just someone who makes you scared to suggest a smaller wedding? Just someone who throws things when he's angry. You don't understand. Her voice was getting stronger now, defensive. You and Daddy had this perfect marriage, but real life isn't like that. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for love. Sacrifices. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through my empty kitchen. Is that what we're calling theft now? Sacrifice. I thought you'd understand eventually. I thought once you saw how happy I was, how successful Derek becomes, you'd forgive me. Forgive you for what, exactly? For stealing my home? For lying to me? For trusting a man who terrifies you? I paused, letting the questions sink in. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? The silence stretched between us again, heavy with unspoken truths. I could hear her crying now, soft sniffles that reminded me of when she was 7 years old and had broken my favorite vase playing ball in the house. Sarah, I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. My baby girl, who was marrying a man who threw glasses and stole from elderly widows, was carrying his child. How far along? 3 months. Her voice was barely audible. I found out right after you gave me the power of attorney. I was going to tell you, but then Derek started talking about the business opportunity, and you were still recovering from your stroke, and I thought, does he know? No. The word came out sharp and quick. And I can't tell him. Not yet. Why not? Another long pause. Then, in a voice so small I had to strain to hear it. Because he's made it very clear he never wants children. He says kids are financial drains, that they ruin careers and relationships. When his sister announced her pregnancy last year, he said she was stupid for throwing her life away. My heart shattered completely. Sarah was pregnant, terrified, trapped in a relationship with a man who would hate her for carrying his child, and she'd sold my house to pay for the privilege of marrying him. Oh, sweetheart. I closed my eyes, trying to think, trying to find a solution. We'll figure this out. We'll find a way. There is no way. The words exploded out of her. Don't you see? I can't tell him about the baby because he'll leave me. I can't cancel the wedding because he'll lose everything and blame me. I can't give you back your house because the money's gone. There's no way out, Mama. I'm trapped. Trapped. My beautiful, intelligent daughter. The little girl who used to dream of becoming a teacher, who wanted to have 6 children and a house with a white picket fence, was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Where are you right now? I asked. At Derek's apartment. He's at the gym. The wedding is in 6 hours, and I haven't even started getting ready. I can't stop crying long enough to put on makeup. Listen to me very carefully. You're going to get in your car and come home. Right now. I can't. Derek will. Derek will what? Hit you? Scream at you? Throw more glasses. My voice hardened. Sarah, if you're this afraid of him before you marry him, what do you think he'll be like after? What do you think he'll do when he finds out about the baby? I don't know, she whispered. I'm so scared, Mama. I'm so scared, and I don't know what to do. My daughter was scared. My baby girl was trapped with a man who terrified her, carrying a child she couldn't tell him about, having destroyed her own mother's life to pay for the privilege. And in 6 hours, she was supposed to walk down the aisle and promise to love, honor, and obey him for the rest of her life. Come home, I said again. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. But you don't have to marry him, Sarah. You don't have to spend the rest of your life being afraid. But the wedding, everyone's coming. His family, his business partners. The photographer, the flowers, the reception. Let them come. Let them eat the expensive food and dance to the expensive band. But you don't have to be there. He'll kill me. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Kill her. Not be angry or be disappointed. Kill her. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, you get in your car right now and come home. Do you hear me? Right now. I can't. I'm too scared. What if he follows me? What if he comes to your house? Then we'll call the police. With what evidence? He's never actually hit me. He's never technically done anything illegal except help me sell your house, which was legal because of the power of attorney. She was right, and we both knew it. Throwing a glass wasn't assault. Being controlling wasn't a crime. Making someone afraid wasn't against the law. The money, I said suddenly. If Derek's business is failing, if he's desperate enough to steal from his fiancée's mother, there might be other things. Financial irregularities. Maybe even fraud. I don't know anything about his business dealings. But you know he's desperate. Desperate enough to convince you to sell your mother's house. Men like that don't usually limit themselves to one victim, Sarah. I could hear her thinking, processing. My daughter had always been smart, too smart to get involved with someone like Derek under normal circumstances. But pregnancy and fear could make even intelligent women make terrible choices. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can find a way to fight back. Maybe there's more to Derek's story than he's told you. Maybe. The sound of a door slamming in the background made us both go silent. He's back, Sarah whispered. I have to go. Sarah, don't. But the line was already dead. I sat there holding the phone, listening to the dial tone, knowing my daughter was 6 miles away with a man who might kill her, carrying a baby she couldn't tell him about, trapped in a web of lies and desperation that I'd inadvertently helped create by trusting her with my power of attorney. The grandfather clock chimed 7 o'clock. In 5 hours, Sarah was supposed to walk down the aisle at St. Mark's Episcopal Church and marry a man who terrified her. unless I could find a way to stop it. I stood up slowly, my arthritic knees protesting, and walked to the kitchen window. The sun was fully up now, painting the backyard where Sarah used to play on her swing set, where David had taught her to ride her bike, where we'd hosted countless barbecues and birthday parties and graduation celebrations. In 3 days, someone else would be looking out this window. Someone else would be making coffee in my kitchen, sleeping in my bedroom, living the life I'd built with my husband. But right now, today, it was still mine. And I was going to use every minute I had left to save my daughter from the biggest mistake of her life. I picked up the phone and dialed information. "Yes, I need the number for St. Mark's Episcopal Church," I said when the operator answered. "And then I'll need the number for the police department's non-emergency line." It was time to start making some calls. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door at 10:30 that morning, her weathered hands clutching her car keys like a lifeline. "Eleanor, you ready for this?" she asked, studying my face with the shrewd eyes of someone who'd lived through 8 decades of human foolishness. "Because once we walk into that church, there's no telling what kind of mess we'll find." I smoothed down my navy blue dress, the same one I'd worn to David's funeral 5 years ago, because it seemed fitting somehow. Today felt like another kind of death. I'm as ready as I'll ever be, Dad. The drive to St. Mark's Episcopal Church took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Through the passenger window, I watched Port Haven wake up to what should have been a perfect June wedding day. Clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, just enough breeze to keep the humidity bearable. The kind of day David and I would have spent in the garden, him deadheading the roses while I weeded the herb patch. Instead, I was riding to my daughter's wedding in my neighbor's ancient Buick, because my own daughter had sold my car to pay for the privilege of marrying a man who might kill her. "You sure about this plan of yours?" Dot asked as we pulled into the church parking lot. "Because if you're wrong about that Derek fellow..." "I'm not wrong." I'd spent 3 hours on the phone the night before, first with the church secretary, then with Detective Morrison from the Fraud Division, no relation, despite the name, and finally with a very interesting woman in Miami who'd been more than happy to share what she knew about Derek Blackwell. The church parking lot was full of expensive cars. BMW sedans, Mercedes coupes, a few Autos scattered among the mix. Derek's people flaunting their wealth while my daughter prepared to marry a man who'd stolen an old woman's house to impress them. "Look at that circus," Dot muttered, nodding toward the church steps where a photographer was directing an elaborate setup. "How much you think all this cost?" "Every penny of my house," I said quietly. We walked through the church's front doors, and I was immediately struck by how beautiful everything looked. White roses and baby's breath everywhere, satin ribbons tied in perfect bows, candles flickering at every pew. Sarah had always dreamed of a church wedding, ever since she was little and we'd attend Christmas Eve services as a family. But the people made my skin crawl. Derek's family clustered near the front of the church like a murder of crows in their black designer suits. I recognized his mother from the photos Sarah had shown me, a sharp-faced woman with silver hair pulled back, so tight it looked painful. She was holding court with what appeared to be his siblings, their voices carrying just far enough for me to catch fragments. Rushed wedding, if you ask me. Barely know the girl. Mother looks like she shops at thrift stores. Probably gold diggers, both of them. I felt Dot's hand on my arm, steadying me. "Deep breaths, Eleanor. Remember why we're here." A young man in a black suit approached us with a practiced smile. "Good morning, ladies. Are you here for the Blackwell-Morrison wedding?" "We are," I said, lifting my chin. "I'm the bride's mother." His smile faltered slightly, and I saw his eyes flick to my off-the-rack dress, my practical shoes, my lack of jewelry beyond David's simple wedding band. "Oh, of course. Right this way, Mrs. Morrison. Eleanor Morrison." He led us down the aisle, past Derek's whispering relatives, to a pew in the second row on the bride's side. The bride's side that was pathetically empty compared to the groom's packed section. A few of Sarah's work friends, my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, Sarah's college roommate who'd flown in from Seattle. Maybe 15 people total, compared to the 60 or 70 on Derek's side. "Where is everyone?" Dot whispered as we settled into our seats. "Sarah doesn't have many friends left," I admitted. Derek didn't like most of them. Said they were jealous of her happiness. Another red flag I'd missed. Another warning sign I'd ignored because I'd trusted my daughter's judgment. The organ began playing soft background music, and I looked around the church one more time, noting the exits, the location of the vestry where Sarah would be getting ready, the position of the altar where my daughter was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. If my phone calls had worked, if Detective Morrison had been able to track down what I suspected, this wedding would never reach the I do stage. If I was wrong, Mrs. Morrison? I turned to find a young woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. I'm Jennifer, Sarah's maid of honor. She'd like to see you in the bride's room before the ceremony starts. My heart clenched. Is she all right? She's nervous. Wedding nerves, you know. I followed Jennifer through a side door and down a hallway that smelled like old hymnals and furniture polish. The bride's room was a small space with a full-length mirror, a few chairs, and a window that looked out onto the church's memorial garden. Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her wedding dress, and my breath caught in my throat. She was absolutely beautiful. The dress was ivory silk with delicate beading, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon, her makeup perfect despite the tears I could see she'd been crying. She looked exactly like the princess she'd dreamed of being when she was 5 years old, spinning in circles in my living room with a bedsheet draped over her head as a veil. Mama! She turned when she heard me come in, and I saw the terror in her eyes. Raw, desperate fear that no amount of makeup could hide. Oh, sweetheart. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms, careful not to wrinkle her dress. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Her voice was muffled against my shoulder. Everyone's here. Derek's family flew in from California. The reception is paid for. I can't just. You can. We'll figure out the money somehow. We'll deal with the embarrassment. But Sarah, you don't have to marry a man who scares you. She pulled back, and I saw her hands were shaking. Did you mean what you said yesterday? About finding a way to fight back? Before I could answer, there was a sharp knock on the door. Jennifer opened it to reveal Derek himself, resplendent in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Sarah, darling. His voice was smooth as honey, but his eyes were hard as flint. You look absolutely stunning. He stepped into the room without invitation, his presence somehow making the small space feel even smaller. I saw Sarah shrink back slightly, and my protective instincts flared. It's bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony, I said. Derek's smile didn't waver, but those cold eyes turned to me. Mrs. Morrison, I'm so glad you could make it. Sarah was worried you might not come after your emotional reaction yesterday. Emotional reaction. As if discovering your daughter had stolen your house was some sort of feminine hysteria. I wouldn't miss my daughter's wedding, I said evenly. Of course not. Family is so important, isn't it? He moved closer to Sarah, and I saw her tense. I wanted to tell you how much I'm looking forward to having you as part of the family. Sarah's told me so much about you. The way he said it made it sound like a threat. Derek. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. Shouldn't you be getting ready? The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Just wanted to make sure my beautiful bride was ready. He reached out and touched her cheek, a gesture that looked tender but made Sarah flinch. You seem nervous, darling. Wedding jitters. I'm fine, she said quickly. Too quickly. Derek's eyes narrowed slightly, and I saw his jaw tighten. Good. Because you know how important today is. For both of us. For our future. The subtext was clear. Don't even think about backing out now. We should let Sarah finish getting ready, I said, stepping between them. Derek's smile turned razor-sharp. Of course. I'll see you at the altar, darling. He leaned down and kissed Sarah's cheek, and I saw her close her eyes as if bracing for a blow. After he left, Sarah collapsed into a chair like a marionette with cut strings. I can't do this, she whispered. Mama, I can't marry him. But I can't not marry him either. He'll destroy everything. Sarah. I knelt beside her chair, taking her cold hands in mine. Listen to me very carefully. I made some phone calls yesterday. About Derek. Her eyes widened. What kind of calls? The kind that might just save your life. Before I could explain, the organ music swelled, signaling the start of the processional. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, looking frazzled. Sarah, we need to line up. The groomsmen are in position. My daughter looked at me with desperate eyes. What do I do? You walk down that aisle, I said firmly. And you trust me. The processional was everything Sarah had dreamed of as a little girl. She walked down the aisle on my arm, since her father wasn't there to give her away, looking radiant despite her terror. The church was packed, every pew filled with Derek's business associates and family members who were probably calculating the cost of every flower arrangement. Derek stood at the altar looking like a model from a men's fashion magazine, his smile confident and possessive as he watched Sarah approach. His best man, a thin, nervous-looking fellow I'd never met, kept glancing toward the back of the church as if expecting trouble. Smart man. I took my seat in the front pew as Sarah joined Derek at the altar. The minister, an elderly man with kind eyes who'd known Sarah since she was in Sunday school, began the familiar words of the wedding ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sarah Elizabeth Morrison and Derek Michael Blackwell. I found myself scanning the congregation, looking for Detective Morrison. He'd promised to be here, said he'd have backup positioned discreetly around the church. But all I saw were Derek's relatives and business associates, whispering among themselves and checking their expensive watches. If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional words that were usually met with polite silence. Today I held my breath. Nothing. The minister continued. Derek, do you take Sarah to be your lawfully wedded wife? That's when the church doors burst open. Every head turned as a woman in a red dress strode down the aisle like an avenging angel. She was tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair, and the kind of confidence that commanded attention. Behind her walked two uniformed police officers and Detective Morrison in his rumpled suit. I object, the woman called out, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent church. I object because Derek Blackwell is already married. To me. The church erupted in chaos. Derek's family began talking all at once, their voices rising in confusion and outrage. Sarah gasped and grabbed the altar rail for support. Derek himself went white as a sheet, his confident smile crashing and burning. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. Security, get this woman out of here. But the woman in red wasn't backing down. She walked straight up to the altar, pulled a folder from her purse, and held it up for everyone to see. My name is Victoria Blackwell, she announced. And I have the marriage certificate to prove it. Derek and I were married 3 years ago in Las Vegas. He filed for divorce 18 months later, but refused to complete the proceedings when he realized he'd have to split his assets with me. She turned to address the stunned congregation. What he didn't realize is that I've been tracking his movements ever since. Following his pattern of targeting vulnerable women, gaining access to their finances, and disappearing when the money runs out. This is insane, Derek said, but his voice cracked. Victoria, what are you doing here? We're divorced. The papers were signed. Filed, not finalized, Victoria shot back. Because you refused to appear for the final hearing. Which means we're still legally married, which means this ceremony is bigamy. Detective Morrison stepped forward, pulling out his badge. Derek Blackwell, you're under arrest for fraud, grand theft, and attempted bigamy. The church exploded into pandemonium. Derek's mother was shrieking about family reputation, his business associates were pushing toward the exits, and several people were filming everything with their phones. Derek himself tried to run. He pushed past the minister, leaped down from the altar, and sprinted toward the side exit. But Detective Morrison was ready for him. Stop right there. The detective's voice boomed through the church as two uniformed officers blocked Derek's escape route. Derek spun around, trapped, his polished facade finally cracking completely. His face was flushed, his eyes wild, and for the first time I saw the real man beneath the charm. This is all a misunderstanding, he said desperately. Victoria, tell them this is all a mistake. You know our marriage was over years ago. The only mistake, Victoria said coldly, was believing your lies in the first place. Just like you made Sarah believe them. Just like you made Mrs. Chun in Tampa believe them, and Mrs. Rodriguez in Phoenix, and God knows how many other women whose lives you've destroyed. Mrs. Chun, Mrs. Rodriguez, other women, other victims. Derek's eyes darted around the church like a cornered animal, and that's when he focused on Sarah. My daughter was still standing at the altar in her beautiful wedding dress, one hand gripping the rail so hard her knuckles were white. Sarah, he said, his voice turning wheedling desperate. Darling, don't listen to them. This woman is clearly unstable. Jealous. We can work this out, get married somewhere else. You bastard. Sarah's voice was quiet, but it carried through the church like a gunshot. You lying, thieving bastard. Derek's face darkened, and I saw a flash of the violence Sarah had been so afraid of. Watch your mouth, he snarled. After everything I've done for you, everything I've given you. Given me? Sarah's voice rose to a shout. You gave me nothing. You took everything. My mother's house, her car, her life savings. You took everything she had and spent it on lies. I gave you a chance at a real life. Derek shouted back. A A chance to be somebody important instead of just another small-town nobody like your pathetic mother. That was it. Something inside me snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. I stood up from my pew, all eyes turning to me. My daughter, I said clearly, is worth 100 of you. And she's smart enough to see through your lies, even if it took her a while. Derek's face twisted with rage. You meddling old bitch. This is all your fault. If you'd just stayed out of it, minded your own business. My business. I stepped into the aisle, moving toward the altar. You made it my business when you stole my house. When you manipulated my daughter into betraying her own mother. When you threatened her and scared her and made her afraid to disappoint you. I never threatened anyone. Then why is she so afraid of you? I was close enough now to see the sweat beading on his forehead, the panic in his eyes. Why does she flinch when you touch her? Why does she jump when you speak? Because she's weak. The words exploded out of him. Just like you, just like all of you pathetic women who can't see an opportunity when it's handed to you. And that's when Sarah collapsed. One moment she was standing at the altar, gripping the rail, and the next she was crumpling to the floor like a broken doll. Her wedding dress pooled around her in a cloud of ivory silk, and her face was chalk white. Sarah! I rushed to her side, dropping to my knees beside her. Her eyes were open but unfocused, her breathing shallow and rapid. Mama, she whispered, her voice so faint I had to lean close to hear her. I'm so sorry. I'm pregnant, and I've ruined everything. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd already known about the pregnancy. Hearing her say it here, now, in front of all these people, with Derek being arrested just feet away. Shoo, I whispered, smoothing her hair back from her face. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. But even as I said the words, I wondered if that could possibly be true. My daughter was pregnant with the child of a man who was being arrested for fraud and bigamy. She'd sold my house to pay for a wedding that had just been exposed as illegal. And we were both essentially homeless with no way to undo the damage that had been done. Derek was being handcuffed now, still protesting his innocence, still claiming this was all a misunderstanding. His mother was demanding someone call their lawyer, his siblings were slinking toward the exits, and his business associates had already disappeared. Victoria Blackwell knelt beside me, her red dress bright against Sarah's ivory gown. Is she okay? She's pregnant, I said quietly. And she's been under tremendous stress. Victoria's face softened. The baby's his? I nodded. Oh, honey. She looked at Sarah with genuine compassion. You're so much better off without him. Trust me on that. Sarah's eyes focused on Victoria's face. Are there really other women? Other victims? At least 6 that I know of, Victoria said gently. Probably more. He has a pattern. He finds women who are vulnerable, recently divorced, widowed, or in your case, young and trusting. He gains their confidence, gets access to their money, and disappears when the well runs dry. But he was marrying me, Sarah whispered. Because you had more to offer than the others. A house worth over $200,000, plus whatever other assets your mother might have. He would have stayed married to you just long enough to get everything in his name, then found a reason to divorce you and take half of whatever was left. Sarah closed her eyes, tears leaking from under her lashes. I'm such an idiot. No, I said firmly. You're not an idiot. You're a victim. There's a difference. The paramedics arrived then, summoned by someone in the congregation. They knelt beside Sarah, checking her pulse, asking questions about her symptoms. After a few minutes, they helped her sit up. Blood pressure's a little high, but nothing dangerous, one of them told me. Probably just stress and shock. But given that she's pregnant, we should take her to the hospital for observation. I don't want to go to the hospital, Sarah said weakly. I just want to go home. Home. The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. Because we didn't have a home anymore. Derek had taken that too. We'll figure something out, I said, helping her to her feet. One step at a time. As the paramedics packed up their equipment, Detective Morrison approached us. Mrs. Morrison, I want to thank you for the information you provided. It was exactly what we needed to build our case. What happens now? I asked. Derek will be charged with multiple counts of fraud, grand theft, and attempted bigamy. With Victoria's testimony and the evidence we've gathered from his other victims, he's looking at serious prison time. What about my mother's house? Sarah asked, still leaning heavily on my arm. Detective Morrison's expression grew sympathetic but grim. That's going to be more complicated. The sale was technically legal because of the power of attorney. Getting the money back will depend on what assets Derek has left, and frankly, based on what we've seen so far, there might not be much. The words settled over us like a death shroud. The house was gone. The money was gone. Derek was going to prison, but that wouldn't undo the damage he'd done. "Come on," I said to Sarah. "Let's get you out of that dress and get some fresh air." As we walked toward the bride's room, I heard Victoria calling after us. "Mrs. Morrison? Wait!" We turned back to find her hurrying up the aisle, her heels clicking on the stone floor. "I know this doesn't fix everything," she said, "but Derek owes me quite a bit of money too. Alimony he's never paid, assets he hid during our separation. When all this gets sorted out in court, there might be something left for you and Sarah." "We're not looking for charity," I said. "It's not charity. It's justice." Victoria's eyes were fierce. "Derek Blackwell destroyed my life 2 years ago. Left me broken, and convinced I was crazy for thinking he was anything other than the perfect man he pretended to be. But I rebuilt myself, and I've been tracking him ever since, documenting everything, building a case." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "I'm a private investigator now. Started my own firm after Derek burned me. If you need help navigating the legal system, recovering whatever assets might be left, I'm your woman. And my first consultation is free." I took the card, studying the elegant lettering. Victoria Blackwell, Private Investigations. Truth, justice, and peace of mind. "Why?" I asked. "Why help us? You don't even know us." Victoria's smile was sad but determined. "Because 2 years ago, I was exactly where Sarah is now. Pregnant, broke, and completely destroyed by Derek Blackwell. The only difference is I lost the baby from the stress." Sarah gasped. "Oh God. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be smart. Take care of yourself and that baby. And let me help you make sure Derek pays for what he's done to all of us." As we walked out of St. Mark's Episcopal Church that afternoon, Sarah still in her wedding dress, me in my funeral outfit, both of us essentially homeless but somehow still standing, I realized something had changed. For the first time since Sarah's phone call 3 days ago, I felt like we might actually survive this. It was going to be a long road back. We had no house, no car, no savings, and a baby on the way. Derek was going to prison, but that wouldn't pay the bills or put a roof over our heads. But we were alive. We were together. And we were finally free of Derek Blackwell's lies. That was something. It was a start. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. The fluorescent lights in the hospital room cast everything in a sickly yellow glow that made Sarah's skin look translucent against the white pillows. She'd been sleeping fitfully for the past hour, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach, her wedding dress replaced by a hospital gown that made her look impossibly young and vulnerable. I sat in the uncomfortable vinyl chair beside her bed, still wearing my navy funeral dress, watching my daughter's face for signs of distress even in sleep. The doctor had said the baby was fine, that Sarah's collapse was due to stress and dehydration, but they wanted to keep her overnight for observation. Overnight in a hospital room that cost more per day than most people made in a week. Money we didn't have for a bill we couldn't pay because my daughter's fiancé had stolen everything we owned to finance his criminal enterprises. "Mama." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper as she struggled to wake up. "I'm here, sweetheart." I reached over and smoothed her dark hair back from her forehead. "How are you feeling?" Like my entire life just exploded in front of half the town. She tried to sit up and winced. "Please tell me today was just a horrible nightmare." "I wish I could." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, and this time she didn't try to stop them. They came in great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body, months of suppressed fear and grief finally breaking free. "Oh, Mama," she choked out between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What have I done? What have I done to us?" I climbed onto the narrow hospital bed and gathered my daughter into my arms the way I had when she was little and had scraped her knee or lost a favorite toy. But this hurt went so much deeper than skinned knees. "Shoo," I murmured, rocking her gently. "We're going to figure this out. We're going to be okay." "No, we're not." Her words were muffled against my shoulder. "I sold your house, Mama. I sold the house where you and Daddy were happy, where you raised us kids, where you belong. I sold it to pay for a wedding to a man who was already married, and now we have nothing. Nothing. We have each other," I said firmly. "And we have that baby you're carrying. That's not nothing." She pulled back to look at me, her eyes red and swollen. You don't understand. It wasn't just the house sale. Derek, he's been working on me for months. Isolating me from everyone, making me think. She shook her head, fresh tears starting. God, I'm so ashamed. Tell me, I said gently. Tell me everything. And slowly, haltingly, the whole ugly story came out. How Derek had started small, suggesting that her friend Rachel was jealous of their relationship, that maybe Sarah should spend less time with her. How he'd gradually convinced her that most of her friends were holding her back, keeping her from reaching her potential. He said they were small-town people with small-town dreams, Sarah whispered. That I was meant for something bigger, something better. And when I started believing him, when I started pulling away from everyone, he was the only one left. Then there was the campaign against me. How Derek had convinced Sarah that I was fragile, dependent, a burden that was keeping her from living her own life. He said you were manipulating me with guilt, she said, her voice breaking. That the stroke was just your way of keeping me tied to you, making me feel responsible for your happiness. He said healthy mothers want their daughters to spread their wings and fly. I felt sick. Every loving gesture I'd made, every attempt to stay close to my daughter after David's death, had been twisted into something ugly and manipulative. And when you had the stroke, Sarah continued, Derek said it was the perfect opportunity to streamline your life. Get you settled somewhere safe and comfortable while freeing up the equity in the house for more productive uses. The power of attorney, I said. He wrote up the papers himself. Said it was just temporary, just to help with insurance forms and medical bills while you recovered. But then he kept finding more things that needed to be handled, more decisions that needed to be made. Sarah reached for her purse on the bedside table and pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I want to show you something. I want you to see what he was really like when no one else was around. She scrolled through her text messages until she found what she was looking for, then handed me the phone. The messages made my blood run cold. Derek, did you talk to your mother about the house yet? Sarah, I tried, but she doesn't want to discuss it. Maybe we should wait a few more weeks. Derek, we don't have a few more weeks. My investors are getting impatient. And if I lose this opportunity because you can't handle a simple conversation with your mother, I'll have to reconsider our entire relationship. Sarah, please don't say that. I just need more time to find the right way to approach her. Derek, the right way is to be honest about what's best for everyone involved. Your mother is being selfish, clinging to a house she can't maintain and doesn't need. If you can't see that, maybe you're more like her than I thought. Sarah, that's not fair. Derek, fair? You want to know what's not fair? Watching the woman I love choose her mother's hoarding over our future together. If this is how you handle important decisions, maybe I've been wrong about you. Maybe I should start looking for someone who actually wants to build a life with me. The messages went on for weeks. Derek alternately threatening to leave her and love-bombing her with promises of their bright future together, always contingent on her getting me to agree to sell the house. Sarah, I breathed, scrolling through message after message of emotional manipulation. This is abuse. This is textbook psychological abuse. I know that now, she said miserably. But at the time, I was so scared of losing him. And he was so good at making it seem reasonable, like selling the house really was the best thing for everyone. He isolated you from your support system first, I said, thinking of the domestic violence training I'd attended years ago when I volunteered at the women's shelter. Then he made you financially dependent on him by getting you to give up your apartment and move in with him. Then he started the campaign to turn you against me, your strongest remaining relationship. And I fell for all of it. Sarah's voice was bitter with self-recrimination. I let him convince me that you were the problem, that everyone who cared about me was the problem. God, what kind of daughter does that make me? The kind who was being systematically manipulated by a professional con artist, I said firmly. Sarah, this wasn't your fault. Derek is a predator who knew exactly what he was doing. Before she could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. A woman's voice called out, Mrs. Morrison? It's Victoria Blackwell. May I come in? I looked at Sarah, who nodded weakly. Come in. Victoria entered carrying a bouquet of yellow roses and a manila folder thick with papers. She'd changed out of her red dress into a simple black suit that made her look every inch the professional investigator. How are you feeling, honey? She asked Sarah, setting the flowers on the bedside table. Like an idiot, Sarah said. Join the club. We meet for coffee and war stories every Thursday. Victoria's smile was wry but kind. Actually, I brought something that might make you feel less idiotic and more like the victim you actually are. She opened the manila folder and pulled out a stack of documents. I've been busy since we left the church. Called in some favors, reached out to my contacts in law enforcement. What I found is going to make you both very angry, but it's also going to give us the ammunition we need to fight back. What kind of ammunition? I asked. The kind that proves Derek's entire operation was fraudulent from start to finish. Victoria pulled out a chair and sat down, spreading papers across the rolling table meant for hospital meals. Let's start with the house sale. She pulled out a copy of the deed transfer and pointed to several signatures. See these? Derek forged at least 3 signatures on the closing documents. The notary seal is fake. The notary whose name appears here has been dead for 6 months. And the title company he used? Golden State Title Services? It's a shell company. No real office, no real employees, just a P.O. box and a website that went live 3 weeks before your house sale. My heart started racing. What does that mean? It means the sale was completely fraudulent, Victoria said, her eyes bright with triumph. Which means it can be reversed. We can get your house back. Sarah sat up straighter in bed. Really? We can undo this. It's going to take time, Victoria warned. Months of legal fighting. Derek's going to claim the signatures are real, that he had your authorization to act on your behalf. But I've got handwriting experts who can prove the forgeries, and I've got enough evidence about his fake title company to hang him. I felt like I might cry with relief. What about the money? The proceeds from the sale? Victoria's expression grew grim. That's where it gets complicated. Derek moved the money through multiple accounts across 3 states. Some of it went to pay for the wedding, some went to his creditors, and some just disappeared into offshore accounts we may never be able to trace. So even if we get the house back, we might never see the money. That's possible. But here's the thing. Derek's operation was much bigger than just what he did to you two. I've identified at least 6 other victims across Arizona, Florida, and California. Women he targeted, manipulated, and robbed using the same playbook he used on Sarah. Victoria pulled out another set of documents. This is Linda Chun from Tampa. Widowed 2 years ago, Derek convinced her to invest her life insurance payout in his real estate development company. When she started asking questions about returns, he disappeared with $400,000. $400,000, Sarah gasped. And here's Maria Rodriguez from Phoenix. Divorced, vulnerable, lonely. Derek romanced her for 6 months, got access to her bank accounts, then cleaned them out while supposedly investing in luxury condos that never existed. Victoria continued laying out case after case, victim after victim. The scope of Derek's crimes was staggering. Millions of dollars stolen from dozens of women across multiple states. The FBI is getting involved, she said. This is now a federal case involving wire fraud, mail fraud, and racketeering. Derek's not just looking at a few years in state prison. He's looking at decades in federal lockup. Good, I said fiercely. I hope they throw away the key. But here's the part that's going to make you angry, Victoria continued. Derek's not going quietly. His lawyer, and yes, he managed to hire a very expensive one, is claiming that all his transactions were legitimate business deals. He's saying the women knew what they were investing in, that any losses were just the result of market conditions and bad luck. Sarah made a disgusted sound. He's claiming we knew he was stealing from us? Worse than that. His lawyer filed papers yesterday claiming that Derek is entitled to compensation for services rendered in helping manage your mother's affairs. He's actually demanding money from you. I felt the blood drain from my face. He wants us to pay him $50,000. He claims it's fair compensation for the time and effort he spent arranging your care at Sunset Manor, managing the house sale, and dealing with the emotional burden of your family's financial needs. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. Derek had stolen my house, terrorized my daughter, and nearly destroyed both our lives, and now he wanted us to pay him for the privilege. He can't be serious, Sarah said. Oh, he's serious. And unfortunately, he's got enough legitimate-looking paperwork to make this fight drag out for months. Victoria's expression was grim. Derek's many things, but he's not stupid. He covered his tracks well, created just enough legal gray area to muddy the waters. So what do we do? I asked. We fight. All of us together. I've been in touch with Derek's other victims, and we're organizing a coordinated legal response. Strength in numbers. The more evidence we can present about his pattern of behavior, the stronger each individual case becomes. Victoria pulled out her business card and wrote something on the back. This is the name of the lawyer I'm working with. She specializes in financial fraud cases, and she's agreed to take your case on contingency. No fees unless we win. I took the card, trying to process everything Victoria had told us. The house could be saved, but it would take months. Derek was fighting back with expensive lawyers and outrageous demands. Sarah was pregnant and homeless, and I was temporarily living on the charity of my neighbor. There's one more thing, Victoria said gently. The doctor mentioned that Sarah's pregnancy is considered high risk due to the stress she's been under, which means she needs to avoid additional stress as much as possible while we work through the legal issues. How is that supposed to happen? Sarah asked. I'm homeless, broke, and my baby's father is going to federal prison. How exactly am I supposed to avoid stress? By accepting help, Victoria said firmly. By letting the people who care about you take care of you while you take care of that baby. She reached into her purse and pulled out another set of papers. I've been divorced from Derek for 2 years, but legally we're still married, which means I have certain rights to marital property. One of those properties is a house in Derek's name about 20 minutes from here. It's been sitting empty since he moved in with Sarah. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying you two need a place to live while we sort this mess out, and I need someone to house-sit a property that Derek's trying to hide from his creditors. Victoria's smile was fierce. Seems like we can help each other. Sarah looked at me, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time since this nightmare began. You'd really let us stay there? Honey, after what Derek put me through, letting his victims live in his house while he sits in jail feels like poetic justice. Victoria stood up, gathering her papers. The house is furnished, utilities are paid through the end of the year, and Derek can't evict you because he's going to be a little busy with his legal troubles. As Victoria left us with promises to call in the morning with more details, I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. The terror in her eyes was slowly being replaced by something I hadn't seen in months. Hope. Do you think we can really get through this? Sarah asked. I think, I said, taking her hand, that we don't have any choice but to get through it. You've got a baby counting on you, and I've got both of you counting on me. The road ahead was going to be long and difficult. Legal battles, financial uncertainty, and the stress of Sarah's high-risk pregnancy. Derek was going to fight us every step of the way, using his expensive lawyers to drag out the proceedings and make our lives as difficult as possible. But for the first time in days, I felt like we had allies. Victoria's determination, the lawyer who specialized in fraud cases, and the strength that came from knowing we weren't alone in this fight. Derek Blackwell had made one crucial mistake in his criminal career. He'd underestimated the women he was trying to destroy. And now it was time for him to learn just how dangerous that could be. I'm sitting at my own kitchen table as I write this, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows I thought I'd never see again, casting golden light across the scratched wooden surface where David and I shared countless meals and where Sarah did her homework as a little girl. The familiar weight of my grandmother's china teapot sits between us, Sarah and me, as we share our evening tea, just like we used to before Derek Blackwell nearly destroyed our lives. It's been 6 months since that disastrous wedding day at St. Mark's Episcopal, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sarah sits across from me, 7 months pregnant now, her belly round and prominent beneath one of David's old flannel shirts that she's taken to wearing. She looks nothing like the terrified woman in the wedding dress who collapsed at the altar. The fear that used to live in her eyes has been replaced by a quiet strength that grows stronger every day. The baby's kicking again, she says, placing both hands on her stomach with a smile that lights up her whole face. I swear she's going to be a soccer player. We found out last month that Sarah's carrying a girl. Emma Rose Morrison. Sarah decided to keep her maiden name, to give the baby a fresh start without any connection to Derek Blackwell. The middle name Rose is for my mother, Sarah's grandmother, who would have loved to meet her great-granddaughter. She's probably just excited about the banana bread cooling on the counter. I say, nodding toward the kitchen where the smell of cinnamon and vanilla still lingers. Your grandmother always said babies can smell good food through the womb. Sarah laughs, a sound that still catches me by surprise sometimes. For so long during those dark months with Derek, her laughter had become rare, tentative, as if she wasn't sure she deserved to be happy. Now it comes easier, more natural, though I can still see the careful way she protects herself, the wariness that may never completely go away. The sound of a car in the driveway draws our attention to the window. A silver Honda Civic pulls up beside my old blue sedan. The car that Derek sold has been replaced by a modest used vehicle, Nothing fancy, but reliable enough to get us where we need to go. That'll be Linda, Sarah says, pushing herself up from the table with the careful movements of a woman in her third trimester. She said she'd stop by after her therapy appointment. Linda Chun. The name that once represented just another one of Derek's victims has become synonymous with strength, determination, and unexpected family. When Victoria first told us about Linda, the widow from Tampa who'd lost her life insurance payout to Derek's fake real estate schemes, I'd pictured someone broken, defeated. I'd been completely wrong. Linda turned out to be a force of nature wrapped in a 5'2" frame. With steel gray hair she kept in a neat bob, and the kind of practical intelligence that comes from raising 4 children as a single mother. She'd driven up from Tampa 3 months ago, ostensibly to testify in Derek's trial, and somehow never left. I like it here, she'd told me simply when I'd asked why she was staying. It feels like home, and you two feel like family. She wasn't wrong. In the strange way that trauma can sometimes create the most unexpected bonds, Linda had slipped into our lives like she'd always belonged there. She rented a small apartment downtown, got a part-time job at the hardware store where her no-nonsense attitude and genuine helpfulness made her an instant hit with customers, and somehow became the second daughter I'd never had. The front door opens without a knock. Linda has her own key now, another small symbol of how our little family has grown and changed. I brought Chinese food, she calls out, her voice carrying the slight Boston accent she's never lost despite 40 years in Florida. And before you argue, Eleanor, it's from that place Sarah likes, and pregnant women need variety in their diet. She appears in the kitchen doorway carrying bags that smell like garlic and ginger, her gray hair slightly windswept, and her practical navy jacket buttoned against the October chill. At 62, Linda has the kind of energy that makes me feel young again, the kind of purposeful movement that comes from someone who's survived the worst life can throw at them and decided to keep fighting anyway. How is Dr. Martinez? Sarah asks, accepting Linda's kiss on the cheek with the easy affection they've developed over the past few months. Productive, Linda says, unpacking containers of lo mein and sweet and sour chicken onto the counter. We talked about the trial, about Derek's sentencing, about moving forward. She thinks I'm making good progress. Linda had started therapy after Derek's conviction, working through the guilt and self-blame that all of us victims had carried. It was her idea that Sarah start seeing Dr. Martinez too, and the suggestion had been one of the best gifts Linda could have given us. Speaking of the trial, Linda continues, settling into what has become her usual chair at the kitchen table, I got a call from the prosecutor's office today. Derek's appeals were denied. All of them. He's going to serve the full 5 years, no early release. 5 years. It had seemed like both forever, and not nearly enough when the judge handed down the sentence 3 months ago. Derek had stood in that courtroom in his orange jumpsuit, flanked by his expensive lawyers, still trying to convince everyone that he was the real victim here. The prosecution did an excellent job, Linda continues, serving up portions of fried rice with the efficiency of someone who's fed a family for decades. Victoria's evidence about the pattern of fraud across multiple states really sealed it. And when that handwriting expert testified about the forged signatures on Eleanor's house sale, she doesn't need to finish. We all remember that day in court, watching Derek's face as the expert methodically destroyed his claims that the signatures were legitimate. The moment when his carefully constructed house of lies finally collapsed completely. What about the restitution? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know the answer. That's more complicated, Linda admits. Derek's assets are tied up in so many shell companies and offshore accounts that it's going to take years to sort out. But the good news is that the house sale reversal went through completely. This place is yours free and clear, Eleanor. No liens, no encumbrances, and Derek has no legal claim to any of it. My house. My home. The place where David and I built our life together, where we raised our children, where I thought I'd grow old and die. I'd gotten it back, but the victory felt different than I'd expected. Not triumphant so much as quietly grateful, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. There's something else, Linda says, and her tone makes both Sarah and me look up from our food. Something Victoria discovered in Derek's files that I think you both need to know. Sarah's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. What kind of something? Linda reaches into her purse and pulls out a manila folder I recognize. Victoria's signature filing system for keeping track of Derek's crimes. It's about how Derek found you in the first place, Sarah. How he knew to target your family. The kitchen suddenly feels too quiet. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway has stopped its familiar ticking, as if the whole house is holding its breath. What do you mean? Sarah asks. Derek didn't meet you by accident at that coffee shop 2 years ago, Linda says gently. He'd been watching your family for over a year before that. Planning. She opens the folder and spreads out photocopied documents, surveillance photos, financial records, even copies of newspaper clippings from the local paper. He knew about your divorce from Michael, Linda continues, pointing to a copy of the court filing. He knew about Eleanor's stroke and her hospitalization. He knew about the value of this house, about Eleanor's investments, about Sarah's job at the insurance company. My blood runs cold as I stare at the papers spread across my kitchen table. Photos of Sarah leaving her apartment, photos of me at the grocery store, copies of public records showing David's death certificate and the insurance payout. He was stalking us, Sarah breathes. More than that, he was building a profile. Derek's MO wasn't random. He researched his targets extensively. Single or recently divorced women, elderly relatives with assets, family members who might be vulnerable due to recent trauma or financial stress. Linda pulls out another document, a handwritten chart in Derek's neat script, listing Sarah's vulnerabilities. Recent divorce, seeking validation. Isolated from family support. Mother with significant assets and recent health crisis. Power of attorney opportunity. Sarah makes a choking sound and pushes back from the table. I need some air. She's out the back door before I can stop her, and through the kitchen window I can see her standing on the porch, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the railing as she takes deep breaths of the cool autumn air. I should have told you differently, Linda says, her voice heavy with regret. But I thought you both deserved to know the truth. That none of this was Sarah's fault. Derek chose your family deliberately, strategically. I stare at the surveillance photos of my daughter. Sarah laughing with friends at a restaurant, Sarah crying in her car outside the divorce lawyer's office, Sarah visiting me in the hospital after my stroke. Derek had been watching all of it, calculating how to use our love for each other against us. The son of a bitch, I say quietly. The son of a bitch, Linda agrees. But also the proof that Sarah needs to finally forgive herself. She didn't fall for his lies because she was stupid or weak. She fell for them because he spent over a year learning exactly how to manipulate her. I gather up the photos and documents, my hands shaking slightly. Does she need to see all of this? Dr. Martinez thinks it might help. Sarah's been carrying so much guilt about what happened, blaming herself for not seeing through Derek's act. But this proves that his act was specifically designed for her. He studied her like a subject in a laboratory. Through the window, I can see Sarah has moved to the old wooden swing that David hung from the oak tree 20 years ago. She's moving gently back and forth, both hands on her belly now, talking quietly to the baby she's carrying. She's stronger than she knows, I say. She gets that from her mother, Linda replies with a small smile. Though I have to say, Eleanor, when I first heard about you from Victoria, I expected someone different. Different how? Friendlier, I guess. More helpless. The way Derek painted you in his notes. As this burden that Sarah was carrying, this dependent old woman who couldn't take care of herself. Linda's eyes are bright with something that might be anger or admiration. Instead, I found someone who figured out Derek was dangerous before anyone else did, who called the police and set up that whole confrontation at the wedding, who fought for her daughter even when her daughter couldn't fight for herself. The back door opens and Sarah comes back inside, her cheeks flushed from the cool air but her expression calmer. I want to see the rest of it, she says simply. All of Derek's files, all his research. I need to understand exactly what he did so I can stop blaming myself for falling for it. Over the next hour, Linda walks us through Derek's entire operation. The months of surveillance, the careful orchestration of their accidental meeting at the coffee shop, the systematic way he'd isolated Sarah from her friends and family while positioning himself as her savior and protector. He even researched your favorite coffee order, Linda says, pointing to a note in Derek's handwriting. Large caramel macchiato with an extra shot, no whip. He made sure to be at Java Junction every Tuesday at 10:15 a.m. because that's when you always stopped for coffee on your way to work. I thought it was fate, Sarah says quietly. This handsome, successful man who just happened to like the same coffee shop, who just happened to share my sense of humor, who just happened to understand what I was going through with the divorce. It wasn't fate, I say firmly. It was premeditation. Derek Blackwell is a predator who spent a year learning how to hunt you specifically. Sarah nods, and I can see something shifting in her expression. The guilt and self-recrimination that have shadowed her for months are finally beginning to lift, replaced by the anger that should have been there all along. "The bastard," she says, and then looks startled at her own vehemence. "The bastard." Linda and I agree in unison, and suddenly we're all laughing. Not because anything is funny, but because sometimes laughter is the only response to the sheer audacity of evil people. The baby chooses that moment to give Sarah a particularly strong kick, and she gasps, placing both hands on her belly. "Easy there, little one," she murmurs. "Mama's just having a moment of righteous indignation on behalf of all women everywhere." "She's going to be a fighter," Linda says with satisfaction. "With you two as her mother and grandmother? That little girl is going to be unstoppable." Emma Rose Morrison, my granddaughter, who will grow up knowing that her mother is a survivor, that her grandmother is tougher than she looks, and that families can be built in the most unexpected ways. 2 weeks later, Sarah goes into labor at 3:47 a.m. on a rainy Thursday morning in November. I'm awakened by her voice calling from the hallway. "Mama, I think it's time." By 6:23 p.m. that same day, I'm holding my granddaughter for the first time. Emma Rose Morrison weighs 6 pounds 2 ounces, has a cap of dark hair just like her mother's, and the most serious expression I've ever seen on a newborn baby. "She's perfect," I whisper, rocking her gently as Sarah recovers from the delivery. "Absolutely perfect." Sarah is exhausted but radiant, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her face glowing with the kind of joy that comes from holding your child for the first time. "Mama," she says softly, and her voice carries all the love and gratitude and healing that has grown between us over these difficult months. "I should have trusted you instead of him. I should have known that someone who truly loved me would never ask me to hurt you." "Oh, sweetheart." I carefully transfer Emma to Sarah's waiting arms, watching as my daughter looks down at her baby with wonder. We both learned things we didn't expect to learn, but we survived and we're stronger now. We are, aren't we? Sarah's smile is soft as she touches Emma's tiny fist. All of us. Even Linda, who drove 4 hours to be here for the birth of a baby who isn't even related to her. Linda had indeed made the drive from Tampa, arriving just hours after Emma was born with flowers, baby clothes, and the kind of practical gifts that only someone who's raised 4 children knows to bring. Linda is family now, I say simply. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most. As I sit in the hospital room watching my daughter hold her baby, watching the way Sarah's face has softened with love, the way her shoulders have finally relaxed after months of carrying fear and guilt, I think about all the ways our lives have changed. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost everything. My house, my savings, my relationship with my daughter, my faith in my own judgment. Derek Blackwell had taken all of that and more, leaving us broken and frightened and seemingly without options. But here we are. Sarah is healing, stronger and more confident every day. I got my house back, my independence restored. We found Linda, who brought her own strength and wisdom to our little family. And now there's Emma, perfect and healthy and completely untouched by Derek's poison. At 74, I've learned that I'm tougher than I thought. That love can survive betrayal if it's real enough, strong enough, patient enough. That sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love and trust, but that doesn't mean we stop loving or trusting altogether. I've also learned that real love, like Linda's unexpected friendship, like Victoria's fierce advocacy, like Sarah's eventual courage to fight back, can come from the most surprising places. That families can be formed in hospital rooms and courtrooms and kitchen tables, bound together not by blood, but by choice and circumstance and shared survival. Sarah looks up at me from where she's cradling Emma, and her eyes are bright with tears of joy instead of the tears of fear I've seen too much of over the past year. Thank you, Mama, she says quietly, for not giving up on me, for fighting for us even when I couldn't fight for myself. That's what mothers do, I tell her, smoothing a strand of hair away from her face. We protect our babies, no matter how old they get, no matter what mistakes they make. Love like that doesn't have conditions, sweetheart. It doesn't have an expiration date. Emma opens her dark eyes and looks directly at me, as if she understands every word. As if she already knows that she's been born into a family that has been tested by fire and emerged stronger for it. Welcome to the world, Emma Rose, I whisper to my granddaughter. You're going to love it here. And looking around at my daughter and this baby and the life we've rebuilt from the ashes of Derek Blackwell's destruction, I realize that I'm not just saying that to comfort a newborn. I actually believe it's true. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like, and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.